This is the Louie T Network. This is the Louie T Network.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report Live. Special edition. Redskins go ahead and do something that has been probably in the works for quite some time. As fans, we've been looking forward to this, I don't know, maybe since last season. I wasn't convinced that he needed to go last year, but after watching this defense muck it up yet again and stop one of the best offenses from going to the playoffs, one of the worst third down defenses in NFL history, and failing to get rid of players who simply weren't getting the job done week after week, it was time for Joe Barry to go, Redskins ex-defensive coordinator. And today, the Redskins make that official along with a couple other firings. You never want to rejoice another man losing employment. So for as excited as I am for the future of this football team, because we're shedding some dead weight here, I still feel bad because someone lost their job, but he had to go, okay? Let's face it, this defense was historically bad, and despite how bad this defense was, we still won 8 games and probably should have won 10 or 11, despite how bad this defense was. So just imagine if we can get someone in here who can get this defense to just be average. That's it. We're not looking for a guy to come in here and work a miracle in 1 year. Just get the defense to be average. If we put up numbers like we did this season, we will win 10, 11, possibly 12 games with just an average defense. And there are coordinators out there right now, including Wade Phillips, just to name a few, Gus Bradley. There are a number of defensive coordinators that could probably come in here and turn things around for this Redskins defense. Now, we'll talk about all the candidates out there and some guys that have been potentially linked to the Redskins defensive coordinator job here in a second. But first and foremost, we'll talk about the guys who are no longer members of this Redskins family. Joe Barry, of course, defensive coordinator, gone. It was coming. We knew it was coming. We just did not know when. But along with him going out the door, secondaries coach Perry Fewell, also defensive line coach Robb Akey, and also strength and conditioning coach Mike Clark. So all of those guys, and I think in the title I actually said 2 other members, make it 3 with the strength and conditioning coach as well. So Redskins are making some moves, and we'll see what they decide to do in those particular positions. Some guys that were able to retain their jobs on that defensive staff. You've got a couple of linebacker coaches, Kirk Cousins, the inside linebackers coach, and Greg Minuski, the outside linebackers coach. They were able to avoid the hook and the pink slip. They'll remain the coaches of their respective units. Minuski, outside linebackers, Cousins, inside linebackers. So they were able to avoid the swift hook of one Jay Gruden. However, the aforementioned coaches, Akey, Fewell, and of course Joe Barry, not so fortunate as those guys have been canned. So I'm not going to sit here and eat up a bunch of time rambling. We knew this was coming. Okay, I don't have to sit here and talk about how bad this defense was. I've done that all season long. Every video I've done talking about the Redskins, we've talked about how bad this defense. So I don't need to sit here and do that and lament how bad this defense. I don't have to talk about how bad Joe Barry was as a defensive coordinator. We've talked about that already this season a number of times. We've talked about him needing to be pushed out of the door and someone else coming in here to get this thing right in DC. And so I'm not going to sit here for 15, 20 minutes rambling about something we've talked about all season long. I'm going to let you guys do that. And I know you guys have plenty to say on this subject matter. You're going to have candidates lined up that you want. You're going to have your opinion that he had to go. So I'm going to get straight to your comments right now. Let's not delay. Let's get to your comments right away and see what you guys have to say on the Redskins finally making it official. Defensive coordinator Joe Barry among 4 Redskins ex-coaches fired today. Joe Barry being the most notable, of course. Also, defensive coordinator Joe Barry went out the door along with secondary coach Perry Fewell, defensive line coach Robb Akey, and also strength and conditioning coach Mike Clark. So let's get to your comments and see what you guys have to say. Rocksteady 1974, the great, says, I hate to see anyone lose their job, but that mofo had to go. I think that is as eloquent as you can put it right there. Those are my exact sentiments. You hate to see anybody have to pack their things up and go. But this mofo had to go. I think, and he even rhymed with it. Rocksteady got nasty with it. It was time for Joe to go. Joe B had to go, man. He had to exit stage left. Chris Davis says, can you pray for us to get Wade Phillips? That's probably my number one candidate. If you had to line them up and you ask me which guy that I wanted the most, it'd probably be good old Wade Phillips. Wade, wherever he goes, good defense follows. I'd love to see us get our hands on. I wanted Wade the first time around. Honestly speaking, 2 years ago when we were in the market for a defensive coordinator, Wade Phillips was out there and he chose Denver over us. I don't think he actually gave us a legit opportunity. I'm not sure how that whole scenario, I'm not going to sit here and act as if I do. I don't know how that whole scenario played itself out, but he didn't come here. Obviously, he went to Denver, won himself a Super Bowl. So it was a good move by him, but we're getting a second crack at it. And a lot of times you don't get a second chance to do what you didn't do the first time. We're getting a second chance at this. We need to make sure we get it right this time. I heard us potentially, they said, well, okay, let me slow down. Because you know how when news breaks, like the defensive coordinator, Joe Barry, being fired, then there's always some other stories that crop up. And you really don't know what to believe because in that first, 12 to 24 hours of something like this happening, there are a number of candidates just shooting out, boom, boom, boom. They're talking about the secondary coach for the Carolina Panthers being a hot name to watch. And I'm like, who is this guy and why the hell should I care? I don't want any no names this time around. I want a guy with a name that I trust, that I know, that I can go and see his work and say, okay, I trust this guy to come in here and try to fix this. All right. Don't give me one of these young, hot assistants that I don't know that I'm supposed to feel confident that he's going to come in here and get the job done. Look, this is a veteran team, or at least a team that we feel like is in a position to strike now. Like if you give us a really good defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio, if he were to shake free from Chicago, Paul Guenther, they talked about maybe Marvin Lewis retiring or being pushed out the door in Cincinnati. Paul Guenther comes loose. Maybe he's a guy that you look at. I talked already about Wade Phillips. Rex Ryan is available. I talked about Gus Bradley already. There are a number. I told you this is the hot season, off season, to need a defensive coordinator. There are so many available. Okay, if Bill O'Brien decides I'm out, if that brass in Houston decides Bill O'Brien's time is done, Romeo Crennel then shakes free. Look, there could be a number of candidates available for this defensive coordinator position in Washington. They must, and I'm putting this on Jay Gruden's lap because he was the one that was instrumental in getting Joe Barry the first time. They must get this right, okay? We've went through bad defensive coordinator after bad defensive coordinator. First it was Hazlitt, then it was Joe Barry. Like, we don't want to do this again. We have to fix this. And yes, we need better players, okay? It starts with the guys on the field first. But know this, even without elite talent, good defensive coordinators, hell, great defensive coordinators, find a way to at least get that defense to be average, okay? At least average. We were horrendous this season. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. On the most important down in football, we couldn't get off the field. We've got one of the most dynamic offenses. It doesn't matter if you can't get them back the football. And doesn't it suck to have to always go 77, 75, 82, 85, 89 yards for a touchdown? Wouldn't it be nice for a change to get a 3 and out deep in the other team's territory? They have to punt from the shadow of their own goal line, and we get the football 1st and 10 from the 43. Wouldn't that be nice? It'd be great, actually. We didn't see that very often this year because we sucked on 3rd down, and so teams were getting 3 and 4 first downs before they had to punt, if they even had to punt, if that drive didn't end in a touchdown. So, again, I've said my piece. I said I wasn't going to go on a rant. Let's go back to your comments. SW Mike says, ooh, about time. There's a big change to one of the worst 3rd down defenses in the league, but will this hurt the Redskins or help? It can only help. I don't see how this can hurt us at all. I mean, let's face it. The one thing that I was upset about with Joe Barry is that in times when he needed to be aggressive, he wasn't. And some of that, I think he didn't trust the players, and I get that. I understand that, but at some point, because even sometimes when we blitz, we still didn't hit home, okay? Especially when Suva Cravens wasn't in the game. He's probably one of our best blitzing players. And when he got injured at the end of the season, blitzes damn near didn't work. But with that being said, it's a mindset. It's a mentality. Watching the guys rally to the football. We weren't one of these teams that had 4 and 5 guys getting to the football. 4 or 5 hats, as they call it, getting to the football. It just didn't seem like Joe Barry coached them in that mindset of, hey, we need to get to the football. We need to all rally to the ball, gang tackle. I just didn't see that hustle. I didn't see guys making plays. I didn't see us doing the extra thing that could generate a turnover or get a stop on the 3rd down. And just fundamentals, it seemed like we were lacking in that department. And I think that all falls on the coaching staff. And the first guy that's going to get the blame for that is going to be the defensive coordinator. So I didn't have a lot of confidence in Joe Barry's ability to get this defense to play. And again, I know we need more talent. That is evident. I'm not going to sit here and blame him for all of the failures of the defense, but a lot of it does fall in his lap. That is for certain. All right, let's get to some more of your comments. See what else you guys have to say. Let me... Sergio Pinto Tapia says, didn't I say that JB and Robb Akey are done in DC? You did. Now, let me give you some props right now. I think you called this about a month, maybe a month and a half ago. We said, hey, look, Lou, man, I'm going to tell you straight up. We know JB was going to be gone. We knew Joe Barry was going to be out. But you said, hey, look, Robb Akey's got to go too. And you even had a guy that you were ready to replace him with, Mike Waffle or something like that. So we'll see if you are a Swami or something and you know exactly what the hell is going on. But you definitely called this about a month and a half ago or so. Big ups to you on that one. Jonas McConan says, which upcoming free agents in the league do you think we should get? I have no idea. I don't even know what the free agent list looks like. I don't usually get into that stuff until we get closer to it. You know, after the season is over, regular season, I focus on the playoffs. After the playoffs are over, I start to turn my attention to the draft. And then, I take a little break from the draft and start looking at free agency. So we'll start to see what shapes up, who's a free agent, who re-signs with their team, all of that good stuff. Then we'll start to dig in and dive into guys that we may be able to acquire in free agency to help maybe turn this thing around a lot sooner than not. Jonas McConan also says, what do you think of Kenny Britt as a Redskin receiver? No, I'm good. I'll pass. I think we're fine at receiver unless you want to draft another young guy. I'm not a fan of going out and getting a veteran. We got Pierre Garçon. I think he'll be back. I really do. I don't think he's going anywhere. Deshaun is gone, I think. But you got Josh Doctson sliding right in. So I don't really look at receiver as a problem here. If you re-sign Pierre Garçon, hey, it'd be nice to have both of those guys back, to be honest with you. And maybe we can still have that happen. But right now, in my mind, Deshaun's gone. That's fine. If you get Pierre back, you get Doctson healthy, you got JC Ice, I think we're fine. I mean, you're 3 deep right there. You throw in Jordan Reed, And all of a sudden now you got 4 big-time targets. You get Vernon Davis back. That's 5. I think we're just fine at receiver. You want to slide in Mo Harris. You want to give other guys opportunities. Ryan Grant. I mean, I think we're fine at receiver right now. I'm not really stressed about it, but it wouldn't shock me if they added another guy via the draft, undrafted rookie free agent, whatever the case may be. Somebody with a little bit of speed. That's probably the one thing we'd be lacking in our receiving core if Deshaun Jackson were to bail, is legit home run, game-changing speed at the receiver position. So that would be something that we need to think of, which Kenny Britt does not bring to the table. Jay Moose says, are there must-sign free agents from our team? Yes, I believe there are quite a few, actually. Started with Pierre Garçon. I think that's a guy you got to sign. To me, he's the heartbeat of the offense. He's the guy that makes this thing go from the receiver position in terms of toughness, heart. On Sunday, when we were flat, he was one of the few guys, him and J.C. Ice, to me, were 2 of the few guys that on the offensive side of the football wanted it. They were out there gutting it out. They were doing everything they could to try to help us win, and it seemed like they were the ones trying to lead the charge on that comeback. To me, he's the most feisty player on this team. And I think he is the guy that personifies what you want a Redskin to play like on the football field. So Pierre Garçon, to me, is a must-have back. So is Chris Thompson. Like, I think he's one of the better third down backs in the league. He needs to be a Redskin, and we need to make sure that he's in our backfield for quite some time. Chris Baker. Look, we don't have many good defensive linemen. He's one of them. I think he needs to be back. I don't think there's much doubt there. So I just gave you 3 guys that I feel like have to be back. We could talk about the inside linebacker position. I think Will Compton is a free agent, if I'm not mistaken. I think even if he's not starting, he's good depth. So, and he's going to start. Even if we were to draft and upgrade that position, say we spend a second or one of our third-round picks on a linebacker, inside linebacker, I still think Will Compton's starting. So I think we have quite a number of guys that need to be resigned. Now, obviously, Deshaun Jackson is another guy that I would love to have back. But, again, I don't know if, we're going to have the cap space. And, honestly, I don't know if he wants to come back to D.C. That's the biggest thing, because we do have enough money to re-sign him and Pierre. It's a question of, does he want to come back? And I don't know the answer to that. And then obviously, and I don't know how I didn't mention this first, but Kirk Cousins is the first guy you got to sign. So, I mean, and I guess because that's a given but some people don't feel like he should be back. So let me go ahead on the record and say that's the first order of business, is get Kirk Cousins signed to a long-term deal, which will free up some more cap space for you instead of giving him a franchise tag to pay him around $24 million and eat up a large portion of your cap. Go ahead, get him a long-term deal, and we can start, allocating some of those resources to other players, either on our squad or guys out in free agency that we're looking to bring in to help us. Redskin Fan 21 says, isn't Wade Phillips' son a tight ends coach for the Skins? Yes, he actually is. Wes Phillips is his name, and he is the tight ends coach. That's why a lot of people thought that Wade would come here, because his son was on the staff, but that didn't sway him to come to D.C. the first time. And again, I don't know all of the particulars the first time around, so I can't even speak to that as to why he wasn't our defensive coordinator the first time around. But hey, we get a second shot at Wade. I'd love to see the Redskins go after him aggressively and see what happens. Like I said, I heard the name of a defensive backs coach for the Panthers. I'm like, man, if you don't get the hell out of my face with that sounds like some more Joe B nonsense. I don't want a guy that's an unknown coming in here and trying to help us. I want a known commodity as a defensive coordinator to come in here. If you're going to fail with one of the best. Don't fail with a guy that's an unknown. That's how you get fired, and that's how we end up being 8-7-1 again next year. I don't want to do that. Martin Koratai, I'm sorry if I messed up your last. We're going to call you Martin C. How about that? That's what I'm going to start doing with names I can't pronounce. Martin C says, you were pissed off when the Giants traded in front of us in the second round of the draft to snag Landon Collins. He said that before the draft he wanted to be a Redskin, and he idolizes Sean Taylor. Look at the way that man is playing football now, okay? Landon Collins is a stud, and he's showing it, and we could use a safety right now, which just makes you cringe looking across the field at a guy playing the kind of football that Landon Collins is playing and knowing that he could have been in burgundy and gold right now. But things happen for a reason, and so we'll see. Maybe we got Sua Cravens, and we have no idea what we have at safety, and that he'll come in and he'll be our Landon Collins, and we'll be just fine at safety. We'll see, but man, it does sting. That's for sure. Sergio Pinto Tapia says, do you think wide receivers should give Greg Minuski? Do you think WR should give Greg Minuski an interview as defensive coordinator? I want guy with playing experience or coaching experience, but if we can get Vangio, I'll be really happy. Who the hell is WR? I don't know. But Greg Minuski, I'm not sure he's the guy for the job, man. Let him stay as the outside linebackers coach. I'm good with that. I don't think he needs to be promoted to DC. I'm trying to, like I told you already, I made my position clear as day, crystal clear. I want a known commodity. Greg Minuski was fired as Indianapolis Colts defensive coordinator. Like, I'm not looking for a guy that was fired. I'm looking for a guy that's gotten the job done consistently everywhere he's been as a defensive coordinator. Maybe he's not a head coach. That's fine. I don't care about his head. We're not asking him to be a head coach. We're not asking Rex Ryan to come in here and coach our football team. We're not asking Gus Bradley to come in here and coach our football team. We're not asking Wade Phillips to come in here and coach our football team. We're asking them, who have all failed as head coaches, we're asking them to coach our defense. And they've been great at that every time. So I want one of those guys. I don't want Greg Minuski. Let him stay at the outside linebacker position. Sergio Pinto Tapia says, not going to lie, if I was surprised Perry Fewell was let go. Secondary was a disappointment this year, too. And so I think that was part of the reason why he was dismissed as well. Stephen Gomez says, who do you think we should get as our defensive coordinator? I can't decide which coordinator is the best for us because most of them would be good for our defense. Honestly, I could care less who. I have a preference, Wes. I've already said Wade Phillips is my preference, but I could care less as long as it's a name that I associate that is anonymous with being one of the best defensive coordinators in this league. Again, I think some more could possibly shake out before we're done. I think Romeo Crennel could shake free from Houston. I think Paul Gunther could shake free from Cincinnati. I don't think we're done seeing coaches retire, quit, fired, whatever. I think we still have more openings to come. And that's going to free up some more guys that potentially could be added to the list of coaches that we need to talk to. We don't need to rush this process. This doesn't have to be a quick decision. This doesn't have to be made by next week. We have ample time to figure out. Even the teams that are playing right now in the playoffs, they may have a defensive line coach that's an ex-defensive coordinator that could get the job done. You don't have to rush this process. You've got time on your side. Make the right decision. Do your due diligence and get the right man in here for the job. Please don't find some unknown commodity out there as a D-backs coach or as a linebackers coach or as a D-line coach. Bring him in here. He doesn't understand what it's going to take to get it done, and we struggle again on defense, and all of a sudden now Jay Gruden's fired, and then now our heads are spinning. We're here this time next year talking about looking for a head coach instead of a defensive coordinator. Don't do that. Find the right guy. Make sure it's a hot, known commodity. That's what I'm looking for. Sergio Pinto Tapia says, we got the 17th pick in the draft. Do you like it? No, I don't like it because that means we missed the playoffs. Hell no, I don't like it. But what are you going to do, right? We're 17th. We need to make do with what we have. And we need to find a way to get us. That's right where you need to be to get an elite defensive football player. Like 17 is right around the mix where you're going to have a chance at a really good pass rusher, outside linebacker, one of those types of deals. They need to make good on that pick. A defensive lineman, if one's available. At 17, you should be able to get something of note in that first round and make it count for the Redskins. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they decide to do with that pick. And I can't wait to start scouting some of these players so I can look at a couple of guys and really get attached to a few of them and say, hey, look, I would like this guy, that guy, or that guy. So we'll see what happens. Brian Emerson says, hey, Louie, I don't know if you got my tweet when you were talking about the Dolphins and the Pats game. It was Chris Hogan that gave Edelman that block, and it was Michael Floyd. It was Chris Hogan, I thought, that gave him the block for the touchdown. I know Michael Floyd had a block down by the end zone that I think got Edelman in the end zone on another play. And then Floyd actually scored a touchdown in that game as well. But I thought it was Chris Hogan. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But I thought it was Chris Hogan that gave that huge block that sprung Edelman. Droboy Day. I don't know what that says. DBGG. Let's just go with that. DBGG says, how do you feel about Josh Doctson's injury this season? I didn't have a problem with it because I knew we were loaded at receiver. It didn't really bother me one bit. My biggest thing was, why are you trying to rush this man back? My thing was, don't force him back too early and then he tears his Achilles because he was already having tendonitis in his Achilles. Just let it rest. Just put this guy on IR. Forget about this season because we've got enough stuff. We had weapons galore this year. We didn't need him. He was a luxury. That pick wasn't made for this season. It was made for next season, which is this upcoming season. So I was like, look, just don't push the envelope here and get this man hurt for real where he's got to have surgery and he can't actually be out on the field in the offseason getting the work that he needs. Let this guy heal up now so when the offseason program starts, he's out there getting reps because that's what he missed all of last season. He was hurt all camp. He was hurt all offseason. He got no reps. So this is almost like a rookie season all over for him again. So he needs all the reps he can get. So I just wanted them to let him stay on the shelf and let him heal. And they finally gave up on that experiment and allowed that man to heal, and that's what I wanted. Courageous Matt says, don't think anyone disliked Joe B as a person, but after witnessing this defense continue to be the definition of insanity over the past 2 years, he had to go, lack of talent or not. I couldn't agree with you more. I thought Joe B was a really cool guy, man. Listening to him talk, he says all the right things, but at the end of the day, it's all about results. I talked about this being a results-based league, and he didn't get results. He had to go. Simple as that. I mean, this guy, week in, week out, failed to make adjustments, failed to get teams off the field on third down. And again, I know he's not out there playing. Our players were horrible on the defensive side of the football. That being said, though, you have to find ways to put guys in positions to make plays, and he failed to do that time in and time out, week in, week out, and so he needed to go. Big D Money says, it got to be between Rex Ryan, Wade Phillips, or Greg Williams. What do you think? I have no problem with Greg coming back. We were all Greg Williams fans back in the day. We all thought he was going to get the head coaching job once Gibbs retired, and it didn't happen. Wade Phillips is another guy that I told you, that's my number one. My number one is Wade. And then Rex Ryan, he talks too much. I don't want that distraction on my football team, but that being said, he's a walking soundbite. But that being said, the man can coach up some defense. I wouldn't mind having him in Washington, but he's such a big personality. I don't know if I would necessarily welcome that here in a media that loves to take things and run with it. I would prefer to get someone that's more low-key, but if Rex was the option, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I seriously would not. Nate Moreno says, they're going to hire Rex Ryan? ? I don't know. I don't think they're going to hire Rex Ryan. I don't even know if Rex Ryan wants to be a D coordinator right now. He might be still thinking he's a head coach, might have a big head, and he might want to go into TV right now. I don't know what his thinking is right now. So hard to really say what's going to take place right now. Sergio Pinto Tapia says, please, Redskins, stay away from the first-time coordinators. I agree. I don't want that guy here right now. Maybe down the line, a first-time coordinator is fine, but right now for this team where we're trying to go, we don't need a first-time coordinator. That is for sure. Tom Moe says, who should we hire? I've already told you who I think we should hire. I'm right now pushing all my chips to the middle of the table. I'm going all in right now on Wade Phillips. Tom Moe also says, okay, he said the same thing. Adrian Hernandez says, we need Rex. And so everyone's going to have their preference. Mine is Wade Phillips. Adrian's is Rex. DBGG says, bring in Wade Phillips. He's seen elite D players. So I think he agrees with me as well. Enrique Valencia says, I would love to see Chuck Pagano as a DC once he's fired. And that's another guy that can shake free. And Chuck was once upon a time a really good defensive coordinator in Baltimore. So, again, more options could be available. So you just kind of want to sit tight and see what happens. You don't need to rush this process because I think there are going to be more guys that come available. Roger Arthur says Greg Williams maybe. That's a definite option. Again, considering that he wants to come here, you have to also look at the history between him and owner Dan Snyder and how that situation played itself out. I think you got to let bygones be bygones there if you're both of those guys. And if he's the right man for the job and if that's who they want here, then they need to find a way to make that happen. But like I said, there's so many candidates out there. Don't limit yourself. But also, I'm not looking for a first-time offensive coordinator. Jackie Guerrera says, do you like Wade Phillips? Love the idea of Wade Phillips coming here and being the defensive coordinator. That's, like I said, my number one. RG3 hashtag smoking at 3 hashtag 1000 says, should hire Champ Bailey ass for the secondary. I don't know if Champ Bailey wants to coach the secondary. He's a damn near Hall of Fame player. Most times those Hall of Fame players don't want to coach. They want to own or they want to be a TV personality. So don't know if I see that happening. But then again, you never know what guys want to do. Spartan 04 says, you guys should target Carl Dunbar as your defensive line coach. If you guys fire your secondary coach, target Chuck Cecil. And you've been pushing Cecil a lot. So we'll see what happens with that. See what else we got. DG Production says, Joe had to go. Same case with Gus. Both guys bust. Yeah, it is what it is, man. But Gus Bradley, probably not a head coach, but maybe he's defensive coordinator material. So I wouldn't mind kicking those tires. Mr. DBC or Mr. DCB 215 says, any preference on 4-3-3-4? Bottom line is we play the majority of our defensive snaps in the nickel. So we're really in an even front more than we are in an odd. I mean, so it honestly doesn't matter 4-3-3-4 because we're in a four-man front. I'd say 60, 65, even 70% of the time, we're rarely in the actual 3-4 front. So it's not a big preference for me, honestly speaking. It's not. RG3 hashtag smoking at 3 hashtag 1000 says, Charles Woodson and Sapp would be good coaches for the Redskins. Obviously, those guys knew how to play the game. Do they know how to coach the game? That's a different question and story. But again, like I said, when's the last time you saw a Hall of Fame player come back and coach a position other than Ed Reed going to Buffalo for a year? Like, Hall of Fame players generally don't come back to be coaches. They generally go to TV or they want a piece of ownership. But they don't, or they want to be like GMs or something in the front office. Like, they don't want to be in the trenches coaching. Like, that's rare. See what else we got. Jackie Guerrero says, did you ever like Joe Barry? Like I said, I was a Joe Barry guy. When he first got the job, I was like, hey, everybody was killing him because of his track record. Remember, he was a part of that Detroit Lions 07-08 team that went 0-16. So, or the 08 team, I should say, that went 0-16. He was a defensive coordinator. And then he was in San Diego as a linebackers coach. And so a lot of times when you get situations like that, they go off of what you've done in the past. And people were ripping him to shreds when we first got him. And I was like, hey, give this guy a chance. You know, they hired him for a reason. Let's see what he's got. And I thought after year one, we didn't have enough talent. And I figured, well, we're gonna get it turned around in year two. And it just didn't happen. It never manifested itself. And so at that point, then you have to start looking at the guy that's coaching these players up. And so that's when I started to lose faith in Joe Barry's ability to get this defense to play better. And I looked around the league, and the thing that was frustrating, I looked around the league at some teams with it's hard to imagine that there were many teams out there with lesser talent than us, but there were teams out there with less talent than us. And I was watching them go out and compete hard, rally to the football, do some things. And it was just frustrating. I mean, hell, the Dallas Cowboys defense, they're not 10 times better than us, but they played 10 times better than us. And that's a tribute to Robb Marinelli and his ability to coach them up and get those guys to play. And we failed to do that here. Joe Barry failed to do that in Washington. That's why he had to go. Courageous Matt says, heard Cooley talk about Norman being the most penalized player this year and how Duke lost his spot over a tantrum about losing his number. Need a coach to get these boys back in line. Well, we all knew about the Duke Iheanacho situation, and that's part of the reason why he wasn't playing early in the season. Yes, Josh Norman was the most penalized defensive back in the league. It was those hands to the face penalties that got him. But bottom line is, we just got to be better. Even with all of that stuff, if we were better defensively, you're talking about probably 10 wins this season. You get a stop against Detroit. You get some stops versus Arizona. You get some stops versus Cincinnati. And we actually forced some turnovers in that game. Should have won that game regardless. But you get some stop. You get a stop or two against Dallas in both of those games. You might win both of them. One for sure at home. Even after the Kirk pick, you get a stop. You still probably win that game. We were still up 4. They still needed a touchdown. It was 3rd and 16. We gave up 17 to Cole Beasley. Like, come on. It was 3rd and 14. We gave up 16 to Des Bryant on that drive. Like, come on, guys. That's defense. That's coaching. You got a rookie quarterback playing his second career game, and you're just going to sit back and let him pick you apart in zone coverage? Go after his ass. Speed up the process. He refused to do that. So, Joe had to go. B. Militant says, HTTR, man. Glad we're moving in the right direction. I couldn't agree with you more. This needed to be done. And like I said, I want them to take their time now and figure this thing out. I want them to take their time and get this decision right, because this is a decision that could alter the course of this franchise for years to come. Because if this next guy comes in and he stinks and we go 5-11 next year, we might be talking about Jay Gruden no longer being the head coach of the Washington Redskins. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. And I like Jay Gruden. For all of his faults, all of the things he doesn't do right, and like clock management is horrible. I sit up here and I go off on him. I went off on him in the Giants game with the clock management at the end of first half, which was brutal. I went after him when he wasn't aggressive enough in going for it on 4th and 2 from the 41. But for every decision like that, there's one like he did against the Bears where he went for it and he was aggressive. And I'm like, hey, maybe you could have kicked the field goal there. I didn't have a problem with him going for it on 4th and 1. So I just think Jay Gruden is the right man for this job. I love his temperament. I love his ability to communicate with the players. I love his offensive mind. I love what he's done with this football team. Now it's all about being consistent. And that's why it hurts that we didn't make the postseason, because we were building that mindset of a consistent winner here in Washington, and we failed to do that this season. And now you take a step back in my mind. And that's why making this change could spring us back in the right direction. And so I thought it was definitely necessary. Jackie Guerrero says, who is your favorite candidate for our defensive coordinator? Mine, like I said already, Wade Phillips. That's the guy that I want us to go out and get. RG3 hashtag smoking that 3 hashtag 1000 says, now you guys see why we cut Dante Whitner. Yeah, we did. And we knew he was on the streets for a reason. We knew that. We were desperate. And so you get what you pay for at that time of the year. Nothing worth having is on the streets at that time of the year when we signed Whitner. And we found out why he was on the streets. Jackie Guerrero says, Dante Whitner needs to go. And he will. Trust me, he won't be on this roster come next season. Lorenzo Phillips says, hearing rumblings of Wade Phillips, that's the guy that I want. That's the guy that I think they should target. The first interview that they have for this position needs to be Wade Phillips. And if they don't like what they hear and they don't have a number that they can come to an agreement on, then you move on. But the first guy that they need to talk to, in my mind, is Wade Phillips. DG Production says, side question, will Atlanta be okay without Kyle Shanahan and Dan Quinn? Will Dan Quinn hold it down? It's hard to say right now. Hard to say. I want to see who they hire. If and when Kyle Shanahan gets a new gig as a head coach, then I want to see what they decide to do with that position. I told you my 2 cents on that already, as far as what they need to do in Atlanta with that position if he were to go. Sergio Pinto Tapia says, see now. I skipped a bunch of questions. Here we go. Hey, Lou, if we can get Vic Fangio or Romeo Crennel or Wade Phillips as our defensive coordinator, then Christmas came too early. Any one of those guys would fit the criteria of what I'm looking for at defensive coordinator. Any one of those guys. Fangio, Crennel, or Phillips. All of them fit exactly what I'm looking for. They have all of the prerequisites necessary to be the next defensive coordinator of the Washington Redskins. They've got experience. They've won just about everywhere they've went. They've had solid defenses, even without talent. Those are guys that can get it done. That's what I'm looking for here in D.C. We haven't had one of those types of coordinators probably since Marvin Lewis, to be honest with you. No, not Marvin Lewis. That's a little too far back. Greg Williams was probably the last legit defensive coordinator we've had. But that just goes to show you he's been gone over a decade now. That just goes to show you how bad it's been here. That I'm talking about Greg Williams, and I think his last year here was 2007. So you're talking about almost a decade now. So it's just been bad. Period. End of discussion. Captain Spartan 04 says, one thing for sure, you guys shouldn't still need a safety after this draft. This safety class is outstanding. We'll see. We'll see what happens, what they decide to do. It's early for me to talk draft. I can't do it, so I'll leave that to you guys. Matthew 123 says, who do you think was the most improved player this season? I think Jamison Crowder probably was. And he was outstanding in his rookie season, but he was a much better punt returner. And I think he's got a great feel for the slot and how to win. And I thought he was probably the most improved player on this Redskins roster this season. Spencer Long did a really good job up until his injury. So you could throw him in the mix there as well. But for my money, I think Jamison Crowder really showed why we were so excited about him when we first drafted him out of Duke. James McMillan III says, what do you think about Rex Ryan for our defensive coordinator? I've already pretty much said what I think about Ryan. He's a little bit boisterous for me. I don't need that extra noise coming from my D coordinator. You know, he loves a good soundbite. And you don't want to give the opposition any bulletin board material. And I'm pretty sure that's something that they would talk to him about if they were to make him a defensive coordinator. And again, that's assuming Rex Ryan wants to be a defensive coordinator. In his mind, he may still think he's a head coach and think that being a D coordinator is beneath him. And maybe he decides, I'm going to go and I'm going to play golf and I'm going to, be on TV and make TV appearances and not be a defensive coordinator and see if I can get a job next year. Normally, that's reserved for Super Bowl either winning coaches or at least coaches that have been to a Super Bowl, which Rex Ryan has neither. So we'll see what happens with him. But I don't know if I necessarily would love the idea of Rex Ryan being our defensive coordinator, but I wouldn't be opposed to it either. Let's see what else we have. And I probably won't get to every single comment. We've got 14 minutes left on this program. So I'll try to get to as many comments as I can. Savage Raven says, Kamar Aiken looks good on your squad. We don't need him. We got guys that have similar games to him. And again, like I said, I don't think we're in the market for a receiver anyway. I'd much rather keep our own than go out on the market and go after someone else's stuff. King Wild 1000 says, what position on the defense should be priority number one? For me, I want an elite pass rusher. We didn't have that big of an issue getting teams to 3rd and long. Our problem was getting off the field on 3rd and 13, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 16. That was our problem. We couldn't, if a team didn't decide to run it on 3rd down, give up draw, dump down, run it on 3rd and 2, we had trouble getting off the field. And that's the sign of a team with a lack of pass rush. We need to be able to close out games. We should have been able to beat Detroit just by closing out a game. One sack on Stafford would have probably won us that game. We couldn't get it. And just one sack on Carson Palmer in that Arizona Cardinals game. Maybe we win that game. But we just failed to be able to get to the quarterback. I want an elite pass rusher. That's what I want. But, there are other glaring needs. D tackle. We need a big-time player on the defensive line. We don't have that right now. So, there are a number of positions that would upgrade. But to me, pass rush is still the primary issue with this football team, a consistent one. Don't let Kerrigan's numbers fool you. Murphy had a really solid year. I actually think Murphy might be a better pass rusher than Kerrigan, which sounds asinine, but I think he might actually have better pass rushing skills he's just not explosive and dynamic at all whatsoever. So I think that's the position that you really need to look at. And then, of course, linebacker, I want more speed there. We don't have enough of it. We're a slow football. We've always been a slow defense. Always. Always. Going back to the days of London Fletcher, we've been slow. The only time when we had team speed was when we had LeVar Arrington and Sean Taylor and all those guys, when we went to the playoffs in 2005. That was the only time this defense was athletic at all. Since then, that after that year, Arrington was gone, and we weren't athletic anymore. But we haven't had athletic defenders. That's not something that we do. That's something we need to do is upgrade team speed. Tamo says, is Josh Norman underrated or overrated? He's neither. I think he's respected. Some people might say he's overrated, but trust and believe. If he wasn't on our team this year, do you know how bad you see how bad we were on defense already? That's with teams going away from him most of the time. Could you imagine how bad it would have been if he wasn't here and Vitamin B had to be our number one corner all season long? Do you understand how bad it would have been? We would not have been 8-7-1. I can assure you of that. Trust me when I say that. So if I had to pick one, I'd say he's underrated, but he's not underrated either. Everyone knows his name. Everyone knows what he's about. He's a solid football player. He had a really big chance to make a play on Sunday, and he didn't do it, and that was frustrating. That should have been a pick. Got to make that play. Giants made the plays. We didn't make the plays. RG3 hashtag smoking that 3 hashtag 1000 says, if I were the Redskins, I would draft a free safety. Still don't know what you got in Sewell Cravens, so I'm a little hesitant there. I think we need multiple safeties, though. I don't necessarily know if you need one in the first round, but, we'll see what happens. Savage Raven says, Brandon Williams looked good on your squad. Don't think we have the cap room to keep him. Now, that would be a guy that would be intriguing because he's a big man, eats up some space, can make some plays. Not as athletic as you would like, but Brandon Williams definitely a road grader in the middle of your defense if you're looking to stop the run, which is something we struggle with on a consistent basis. Nate Moreno says, how is this Redskins cap? It's going to be really good this season. The Redskins have plenty of money, and the cap is expected to go up even more this offseason. So I don't think cap is an issue for the Redskins. They're well beneath it. They have plenty to spend. That's why getting Kirk Cousins done in a long-term fashion would be for the best for this football team moving forward, because that would then allow you to start allocating resources to different places, free agency, the draft, those types of things, and even keeping and retaining the services of your own players as well. See what else we can find. Jackie Guerrero says, what are our draft needs in this year's draft for the Redskins? For me, defensively, you need D-line. You need edge rusher. You need an inside linebacker. You need a safety. That's just all on the defense. So I'd take 2 defensive linemen. I'd take 1 or 2 linebackers. And that's not including pass rushers. So I'd take 3 probably linebackers, 2 pass rushers in the inside, or 2 insides and a pass rusher, whatever floats your boat. It'd be nice if Junior Gillette could stay healthy, but that's another subject for another day. Bottom line is, I take 3 linebackers, 2 defensive linemen, and a safety, just to start on the defensive side of football. Now, again, free agency is going to dictate what you do. So if we get stuff in free agency, then you obviously won't need all of those players. So hard to say what we're going to target in the draft right now as it stands. DG Production says, hey, man, I don't know if Kirk is the guy unless he has a lot of weapons. Besides that, he will give you 8-8, 8-8, 8-7, and 1 if you're lucky. He's not a guy I don't think that can go out and win you a Super Bowl by himself. He can't put a team on his back like Aaron Rodgers can. But then again, how many guys around the league can? Like, if you build a team around him a la Alex Smith and the Kansas City Chiefs, you can win with Kirk Cousins. And he's much better than Alex Smith as a passer of the football. So you can win with Kirk Cousins. You just need to surround him with good players. And we didn't do that enough. We did on the offensive side, but we don't have enough of that on the defensive side. And our run game, by the way, stinks. Like, this guy's doing all of this without the aid of a run game. Take away the run game in Atlanta from Matt Ryan. You think he's going to be out there leading the Falcons to 11-5 record, winners of the South, 2 seed in the NFC? No, I don't think so. That run game is vital, and we don't have one. Brian Emerson says, I think a player that I would like to draft if he fell is safety from LSU, Jamal Adams. Yeah, again, like I said, I can't talk to you about the draft right now. Sergio Pinto Tapia says, wide receiver is what I typed too fast. He meant to say we. Okay, I got you. I didn't know what that was. You threw me for a loop there, so I had no clue what you were trying to say. Anthony Thomas says, what do you feel moving forward about Breeland to safety and possibly drafting a running back in the first round? I wouldn't be opposed to drafting a running back in the first round, but again, I want the first 2 picks minimum in this draft to be on the defensive side of football. If you want to draft a running back, go right ahead in the second or the third round. If your first round pick is a big-time defensive player and then you want to go back in the second and get a running back or something on the offensive side, and then you want to come back and spend both your third-round picks on 2 more defensive players, I'm fine with that. But don't spend our first-round pick on an offensive player. Don't do that. Our offense is legit. Go and get us some help for this putrid and horrendous defense. And as far as Breeland is concerned, moving to safety, I don't know if I'm in love with that. I don't think you can't just move guys to safety. I don't know if he has what you need to get that done. I'm fine with him playing corner. I'm fine with him going to the slot when need be. He's fine. I thought he finished up the season strong. So I don't think he needs to make a switch to safety. Sergio Pinto Tapia says, if we get 2 first-round picks next year, we can get J-Doc and whoever we pick. Yeah, you could look at it like that, because he didn't really play and help us last year. That's an extra first-round pick. So, yeah, you could definitely look at it like we got 2 first-rounders coming to us this upcoming season if they stay healthy. Stephen Gomez says, how much money do you think we should pay Kirk? Plus, even if we offer him a low amount of money, he's going to demand a lot of money, which is going to be a bitch if you want to keep Djax. Bottom line is, you got to pay him. You got to pay him. You can't run from this. You had opportunities to pay him before and not have to pay him as much. You waited, and now you got to pay him. You got 1 or 2 options. You're not going to let him walk. That's not on the table. Well, honestly, you got 1 or 3 options. You could, A, sign him to a long-term deal, which you're going to have to cough up everywhere. I think you're going to have to cough up at least $55 to $60 million guaranteed. Minimum. And I think that's the number because if you were to combine this year's franchise and next year's franchise tag, I think it's something like $58 million. So that's the starting point for the guaranteed money. So I think he's going to look at anywhere from 55 to 60 mil guaranteed. And you're probably talking about a contract that's going to be over $100 million, obviously. Probably talking about a contract that's worth $25 million or something like that. Who knows? Bottom line is, 115, 120 over 6 years, $20 million a year. Bottom line is, you got to sign this guy. You really don't have any options. So we'll see what happens. You can still pay. If you pay Kirk, you can pay Djax. You can pay Garcon. It's if you franchise tag him, that's when it becomes a lot harder to then go and re-sign both Pierre and Djax. Rocksteady 1974, the great, says, Lou, do you feel like Jay Gruden is being let off the hook for his part in this? I don't have a Jay Gruden problem. He did hire Joe Barry. So, yes, there is some blame to be passed there, but he thought he was doing the right thing. He thought he was hiring a guy that was going to come in and change the game, and he didn't. And so, yeah, he is a little culpable, but I don't think he's a guy that you would claim is getting let off the hook or anything like that. Jonas McConan says, what do you think of Malik Hooker? Again, can't really talk about these guys until I watch them. I know of Malik Hooker, safety out of Ohio State. I'm not familiar with his game, however. He just declared for the NFL draft, however, so he's going to be an intriguing prospect. Probably a little, as of right now, from what I'm hearing, he's a little too rich for our blood right now. I think he's going to go in the top 15 of this draft, most likely Of course, we're on the outside looking in at 17, so I don't want to get too excited about guys that we're probably not going to be able to get our hands on. We'll see what happens, though. Jonas McConan says, which free agent players in the league do you think we should sign? I don't know the list of free agents yet, as I said earlier in the show, so that's going to be pretty hard to get to. We got 2 minutes left on the show, so I'm going to try to run through these questions as quick as I can and for these remaining 2 minutes. Jonas McConan says, Kenny Britt with the Skins? No. Matthew 123 says, any thoughts on potential departure of Sean McVay? I don't think McVay's going anywhere. We'll see what happens. You heard his name and a couple of teams who are looking for a head coach. We know he's going to be gone eventually because he's a very young and bright offensive coordinator, but I don't think McVay is going to get a job yet. I'm not seeing that happening right now. The Squid Report says, would have been nice if Jets had fired Bowles because he would have been a top candidate. One reason Jay might not want Wade is that Wade would be an easy head coach candidate if Jay is on the hot seat. I don't think that goes into the rationale because you want a guy that can come in and help the defense get better. And by the defense being better, that's going to protect Jay and give him a chance to have this team be better. So I don't think that goes into the thought process. Maybe it does with the front office, but not with Jay Gruden. I don't think he's thinking 75-year-old Wade Phillips is going to take my job. I don't think he's intimidated by Wade Phillips. You want that guy to come in here and help you win on the defensive side of the football. It's now 10:30. This is my last question. Rocksteady 1974, the great, says, we need to bring Richie Pettibone out of retirement, LOL. That'd be great. I heard Richie speak about 3 months ago. I'll take one more. That was actually a comment, not a question. Lit as F says, would you rather the Redskins resign Garcon or Deshaun? You already know my answer to that. Pierre comes first before Deshaun. I just think Pierre does so much for this football team. I want Deshaun back too. I'm not going to lie to you. I want both of those guys back. But obviously, if I had to pick one, I'd go with Pierre Garcon. B. Militant says, I want Wade Phillips. Apparently, his son is our tight ends coach. Might work. He was there before, and it didn't lure him. So I don't know if we're going to be able to get him just because of that. But we shall see. In any event, that's going to do it here. Redskins have some big decisions to make. Joe Barry's out. So is the secondary coach Perry Fewell. So is defensive line coach Robb Akey. So is strength and conditioning coach Mike Clark. Redskins making some changes on the defensive side of the football. We'll see what they decide to do in terms of filling those voids left by the departures of those coaches. Like I said, filling that defensive coordinator position is going to be huge because this move could alter the state of this franchise for years to come. We get a bad defensive coordinator yet again, and we get bad results again, it could really shake the foundation of this franchise. Jay Gruden could be out. We could be a bad football team all over again, and we could be sitting here this time next year boo-hooing and crying about spilt milk and new coaches galore, including the one that matters most, the head coaching position. So they need to get this right. A lot of intriguing candidates out there. Do your due diligence. Do your homework. Make the right selection. I hope it's Wade Phillips, but it needs to be someone with a track record. We're in no position to go with the young, hot prodigy or commodity. No, we need a guy who has done it before. We need a name. We need a guy with respect that can command that in the locker room. We'll see what happens. I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. My Redskins spirit will never fold until we meet again. Hail to our beloved Redskins. You know I'm going to take care of you guys. When we get a hire, we'll be up here talking about it. And I also had, I want to say it was Chris Davis that asked if I could do, and I'm not sure if it was him or not. Someone asked me, and I want to say it was Chris Davis, if we could do a final Redskins report where we just kind of put a bow on this season and kind of really turn the page on the season, a season outlook, and kind of look towards the offseason. And I think the perfect time to do that, I'm like, that's a great idea. And I think the perfect time to do that would be in 2 weeks when there's no football, that week in between the Super Bowl, the AFC, NFC championship games, and the Super Bowl. There's no game. I think that would be the week to fill that gap, and that's probably when I will do that. In the meantime, we'll see if the Redskins make a hire before then. If they don't, we won't talk about it until then. But if they do, you'll see this face again talking Redskins football. Until then, you know what to do. Come check your man out. Remember, we're changing the game one live feed at a time. I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.